Before I start, I want to thank Peter for giving my talk. So I will try to add something to what he said. Okay. So who is me? I was born in 1941 in Tel Aviv. This was in the middle of the Second World War. Everybody was worried. Europe was in terrible condition, but Israel was sort of peaceful and quiet. 1947, elementary school in the city of Ramat Gan, which is near Tel Aviv. 55, high school in Petah Tikva, another city in Tel Aviv. My parents moved. I moved with them. 1959, I started my military service. It's mandatory in Israel, Israel Defense Forces, and I served there for 2.5 years. 1962, Bachelor in Mechanical Engineering at the Technion. I will tell you all about it. And then 4 years later, Master in Material Science at the Technion again. And then PhD again at Technion in 1968. 1972, I went for a postdoc in the United States. And then they invited me back to the Technion to become a lecturer. Lecturer is the lowest level of professorship at the Technion. So they offered me a little position. And I said, yes, I'm coming. And over time, everything went okay. 1991 was my first sabbatical at NBS, National Bureau of Standards. This is a fantastic laboratory, such as very many government laboratories in the United States, which I always praise because it's an example to the world how to create good science. National laboratories. Every office in the United States, every ministry has many laboratories. Okay, so the story. This is my grandfather. Two people affected my life. My grandfather and Jules Verne. My grandfather was a pioneer. He came to Israel in 1906 from Russia. And he taught me several things. First of all, he introduced me to science. He was not a great scientist, but I was 6 years old. So everything he taught me was wow. But more important, he told me not to believe everything I hear. Always doubt, ask questions. Why do you say so? Please explain to me. Don't accept anything as truth. And it carries me a long way into my life. At age 7, he gave me a fantastic gift that started my road to a scientific career, and this was a magnifying glass. And I was running through the fields of my city, Ramat Gan. When I say today, fields in Ramat Gan? No, but there were. And I looked at everything small. Flowers, insects, rusted nails, everything small, and I fell in love with the world of small things. Then, when I was in primary school, at about age 10, the teacher it was called teacher of nature, teacher of science today, said, you know, children, we have a microscope in school. Oh, I said, can you bring it to class? Oh, yes. Next week, teacher, microscope, can you bring it to class? Yes, yes. So after several weeks that I bugged him, he brought the microscope to class. And this was a simple, little, primitive microscope, but the first one I've ever seen in my life. And he said, Dan, you are the most interesting child. Please come and look. And he had a leaf that you could see the chloroform moving there. It was amazing sight. And I'm there, and I don't move. And he said, okay, then sit down and let other people also say, wait a minute. Can you bring the microscope to class every week? He said, no. Where's the microscope? It's in the storage room. Can I go to the storage room and work on the microscope myself? No. Children are not allowed in the storage room. Bad teacher. If you see that a child is very interested in something, encourage him or her. Don't tell him, students don't go to the storage room. No. Bad teacher. I had also good teachers. Enough of that. This is Jules Verne. Most, if not all of the books of Jules Verne were translated from French to Hebrew, and I read them all. I had, my home was full of books. I read them all, and one figure in his book, Mystery Island, captured my interest. Mystery Island is a story of 5 Americans who ran away from Richmond during the Civil War by a hot air balloon, and they find themselves on an island. And the island has everything but no people. And they create modern life, such as the time of Jules Verne. And the leader was an engineer. And he could do everything. And I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be able to do everything. So this is why I went to study mechanical engineering. I graduated at the Technion. I graduated in 1966. Now, in 1966, we had a very big recession in Israel, probably in the world. And I could not find a job. A proud graduate of the Technion, mechanical engineer, and I could not find a job. So I said, well, I will go on and do my master's degree, get some salary as a TA, teaching assistant. I was married already, I had some responsibility. And in 2 years after my master's degree, I will find a job. And I did find a fantastic job. But during these 2 years of master's, I fell in love with science. This was the first time that I thought I could be a good scientist. And I continued for my PhD, and that sealed my fate more or less. My tool was a transmission electron microscope. I was pretty good at using the microscope to analyze crystals of mainly intermetallic compounds, maybe metals, but also CVD diamonds and some other things. Analyzing by contrast analysis in a microscope. So I was good in theory, I was good in practice. I taught many classes to PhD students at the Technion and around the world, and I was pretty good at it. This was my tool. This is the Technion. This is the old building of the Technion. The Technion started teaching 101 years ago, 1924. We started teaching, and this is the first university in Israel and the oldest one. The Hebrew University of Jerusalem is the second one, and they started teaching a year later, exactly 100 years ago. And, okay, this is the Technion today. Now, I'll say a few words about the Technion because it's a very important university. We make engineers and scientists only. We don't teach anything else but engineering and science. Number of students, 15,000. Undergraduate, 11,000. 50% women. 50% women, engineering. When I was a student in mechanical engineering, we were 100 boys in the class and 1 girl. Now, girls are 50% studying engineering. Great, great achievement. Master degree, 3,000 students and 40% women, and doctors, 1,400 and again 40% women. I studied on rapidly solidified metallic alloys. I'll say a word about it. Rapidly solidified materials, you take an alloy of metals like steel or aluminum alloy. An alloy is a combination of several elements. You melt it, and usually you cast it slowly into a shape. Rapid solidification, you cast it very rapidly. So the cooling rate is very, very high, and you get better properties in many cases. So while I was on my postdoc, let's go back for a second. When I was on my postdoc, I did it in the United States, and I started in 1972, and I stayed there for 3 years, and I wanted to go back to Israel, but could not find a job in Israel. No university offered me a job in Israel. And the boss in the laboratory said, okay, you know, you don't find a job in Israel, I'll make you the head of the laboratory, and stay here. I said, okay. The boss says, where will you take the group? Your division, where will you take it? I said, I'll come back to you in a couple of days. So I walk in the corridor and find a colleague of mine who was older than I am, and he was #1 expert in titanium in the United States. And I asked him in the corridor, what's next in material science? He said, I think rapid solidification. Okay. I go to the boss and say, I take the group to rapid solidification. He says, very good idea. This is just starting now. We can be leaders. Go ahead. Several days later, I receive a fax from the Technion. You want a position? You have a job. Went back to the boss and said, thank you very much. I'm going back to Israel. They offered me a position at the Technion as a lecturer, lower degree. And we went back with my family to Israel. And what do I do there? I open a laboratory for rapid solidification. This was the purpose. So this is how it started. And then I went for my first sabbatical to NBS, National Bureau of Standards, in 1981. And I made a proposal to DARPA. Some of you know about DARPA, Defense Advanced Project Agency. And they sponsor research, and they sponsored my research. And the research was to develop aluminum-based alloys, aluminum transition metal. Transition metal is like iron and manganese. Simple alloys that may be the basis for aerospace applications. Nothing secret. And they sponsored me for 2 years. Shortly after my arrival, I prepared alloys very systematically of aluminum manganese. 1% manganese, 2%, 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, 25%. Why am I saying that? Because if you add 1 or 2 or maybe 5% manganese to aluminum, it can be useful, maybe, as a basis. When you add more, totally useless. It has no mechanical strength. It deteriorates in your hand. But the structure was very interesting. In the electron microscope, it was very, very interesting to study them. And by the time I reached aluminum 25% manganese, there I saw this diffraction pattern. And I look at this diffraction pattern at the microscope. This is the original picture, by the way. This is it. And I say, wow, what is the rotational symmetry? And I start to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No. Impossible. 1, 2, 10-fold. And I write in my logbook 10-fold because they only allowed symmetries in crystallography up to that day were 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, no 5-fold, and nothing beyond 6-fold rotational symmetry. Why? Because, and this is true for periodic crystals. You see, the science of crystallography started in 1912 by an experiment by a German scientist named von Laue. He performed the first X-ray diffraction experiment and started the science of crystallography because now we had a tool, X-ray diffraction, to analyze the structure of crystals. And all the crystals that were studied by von Laue and thousands of researchers after him, all the crystals that were studied from 1912 to 1982, 70 years, were all periodic and they were ordered. So the atoms were ordered, there was order, and there was periodicity. If you want to understand periodicity, look at your seeds. You see all these yellow dots in the seeds? They are ordered and they are periodic. In every direction that you go, you see periodicity. All crystals were like this. And because of simple mathematical rules, the rotational symmetry is allowed out 2, 3, 4, 6, no 5, and nothing beyond 6. And here it is, my diffraction pattern, tenfold, which means 5-fold rotational symmetry. Wow. So I said, okay, I think I know what it is. These are twins. Twins are defects in the structure, and in my talks I talk about it. So let me find the twins and forget about it. It's not interesting. So I spent the whole afternoon until the evening to look for the twins and couldn't find them. There were no twins there. I said, okay, now I know what it is not. Well, I didn't know what it was. And that took time to discover. Okay, the end of the story, the King of Sweden gave me, as he gave several other colleagues here, the Nobel Prize in a very grand, fantastic ceremony in Stockholm, amazing ceremony. So if you want to know what is really important to me, this is it. This is my family. I have 12 grandchildren, 4 children, 1 wife. Now, let me tell you a few things about my science and then about educational programs that I started. Do you keep the time? So 5 minutes before, let me know. I don't have a watch. I never wear a watch. About my science. So my science is in crystallography, and I just told you when it started by von Laue. But I did not work on X-ray crystallography. I did not use X-rays. I used electron microscopy. And the scientific community of crystallographers did not accept electron microscopy diffraction patterns as legible analyzing tool. They said, we need X-ray diffraction. And they did not accept. They did not accept quasi-periodic materials. By the way, don't call them quasi-crystals. They're not quasi-crystals. They are crystals with quasi-periodic order. Quasi-crystal is a nickname and the wrong one. I did not invent it. So the community of crystallographers said, bring us X-ray diffraction, then we can talk. And for several years, I could not do that because the crystals were very small. Those days, we did not have micro X-ray beams. So if you take an X-ray diffraction for many crystals, you will receive rings, and you don't see the rotational symmetry. So you could not do it. But 1987, something happened. Colleagues of mine in Japan, Tohoku University, and in France produced large crystals, as large as this, large quasi-periodic crystals. And now they took X-ray diffraction. They sent me the X-ray pictures, diffraction pictures, and I showed these pictures in a conference in Perth, Australia. Perth is on the west coast of Australia. And when I showed this picture of X-ray diffraction, the community of crystallographers said, okay, now we can talk. And they accepted quasi-periodic materials into the realm of crystallography, and now we know that there are periodic crystals and there are quasi-periodic crystals. And if somebody comes and says, I have discovered a third way to organize atoms in a crystal, we listen. We don't reject it, we listen. We are much more humble now. Now about education. Education is job one for every country. Let's talk about Hungary. You have about 9 million people. Israel has about 10 million people. So it's about the same size. Number of children per woman in Israel, average, 3. Number of children per woman in Hungary, average 1.5. So, in order not to shrink, you need to bring immigration. It's up to the politicians to decide whether they want to do that. So I leave it to you. But the fact is that there are not enough young people to support the economy unless they are well educated and they can make more GDP per capita to support the aging population. And in order to do that, you need a very good education system. And you heard from Peter fantastic news about your education system. I hope everything works very well. The future will be fantastic for the educated. So education is job one. I'll tell you about 3 projects in education that I started. Project number 1, chronologically, is to teach at the Technion a new class called Technological Entrepreneurship. It means how to open a company, a startup company, and succeed. Why did I do that? Because when I was a student at the Technion, the spirit of the Technion told us, you will be so good that when you graduate, everybody will want to hire you. And I said, this is wonderful, but what if I want to open my own technology business? Why don't you teach me how to open a technology business? The word startup did not exist those days. So I went to professors and asked them, teach me how to open a technology business. They said, no, we don't do that. We don't teach how to. We teach principles only. Wrong way. 1986, I became a full professor. I said, okay, now I can do things. And I want to listen to lectures on how to open a startup. I want to be a student. So I created a class called Technological Entrepreneurship and opened it for 600 students. Why 600? Because the largest hall of the Technion had 600 seats. 600 students registered, 800 students came to the class. They were standing behind, they were hanging from the windows. It was an amazing success. I brought lecturers, and I sat right there, first row in the corner. I listened. I brought lectures. 3 groups. I give you some details because you may want to do it here too. Group number 1, people who made it big time in industry. They are the leading industrialists in the country, but they started from 0. They did not have anything when they started. And now they are the richest people in the country, billionaires. These are the 3 or 4 first speakers. Every week there's a meeting. Number 2 are startup companies that started only 2 years ago or 5 years ago, still struggling to succeed. And they tell the students what are the problems, how do they solve the problems, what are the difficulties, how to do things. And some of them said, oh, I was sitting on the 3rd row. I took your class and now I have my business. Lecture number 3 has to do with market survey. These are professionals now. Market survey, why you should be very knowledgeable about the market you're getting into. You're getting into a market. The market exists. You should know what's going on. What is the competition? What is the price range? What are the direction of development? Market survey. You should know about patents. I bring in the chief patent officer of the country. He tells them about patents. I bring somebody who talks I bring a lawyer actually, who talks about creating a company. Instead of carrying the burden, the financial burden on your narrow shoulders, create a company, and so on and so forth. This is project number 1, chronologically. Project number 2 has to do with the following. In 2012, this is a year after I received my Nobel, I was interviewed on the radio. In fact, it was outdoors on the radio. And a lady, interviewer, we talked about science and engineering, and I said every country needs more engineers and scientists. The more, the better. The more engineers and scientists you have, the better it is for the country. The interviewer said, yes, but young people don't want to study engineering and science because it is difficult. How do you make them want to become engineers and scientists? And I said, start teaching science early. End of interview. The mayor of Haifa, my town, listens to the radio in his car. As soon as the interview is over, he calls me from his car. Hey, Danny, you said early science education. How early? I said, kindergarten. Let us start teaching science in kindergarten, age 5 to 6, before school. Mayor says, will you do it in Haifa? I said, Mayor, do you pay? He said, I will pay. And we started a fantastic program to teach science in 60 kindergartens in Haifa, and the program goes on now. This is now 13 years later, going on strong. But the cherry on the cake is a special science kindergarten. It's a freestanding building, beautiful kindergarten, and it has 3 groups inside, 30 young children, 3 kindergarten teachers, and on top of everything, they have a laboratory. And when you enter the laboratory, you say, nice university laboratory, yes, very nice laboratory. But you look down, there's a round table, 10 young children aged between 5 and 6, laboratory coats, performing experiments very seriously. And the teacher has a master's degree in chemistry. She can teach high school, but she teaches young children. I invite people from all over the world to see this kindergarten and copy it. It will be excellent also for Hungary to copy this. Number 3 is a television program. I said, okay, I reach small crowds, but how can I reach big crowds? I said, television. So we had at the time a national channel called Educational Channel of Television. Educational Channel. So I went to the boss, prepared a talk of 20 minutes to convince him that it's a good idea to give me a possibility to make a show and to teach science on television. I spoke for 2 minutes, he said, we do it. Okay, we do it. And we did it. And the program is called, it's in Hebrew, but the translation is To Be a Scientist with Professor Dan. And if you go to the internet on your cell phone and put To Be a Scientist with Professor Dan, you see 10 such programs. Why 10? Because after 10 programs, they stopped me. I prepared 30 programs. 30! They stopped me after 10. Why? Because, and this is a lesson to you, one science teacher, wrote me a letter with copy to the television channel saying you did not teach very well. She talks about a lesson on forces in nature. Forces in nature. I was talking about gravity and explained it. By the way, the children were not, they created on the set of the television for me sort of laboratory, and they brought in 3 children, age 8, not 5, age 8, second grade children. And I am sitting with them and talking science to them, and then they broadcast the program. So when I was talking about gravity, the teacher said, you talked about how Earth is pulling 1 kilogram of tomatoes with a force of 1 kilogram of power. But you did not mention math. Math for children 8 years old, too early. You don't need to know about math. When you get to K sub A is equal MA, then you have to know what is M. But right now, no need. Television get the letter, and they said, well, apparently you don't teach very well, goodbye. A cat can destroy career. So it was a loss for Israeli children, but it's still on the internet. These are the three programs that I created. You are very welcome to copy each and every one of them. In fact, I encourage you to do that. It will be wonderful for Hungary if you teach in university how to open a startup and encourage young people to open startups. Israel is called a startup nation. Every young man and woman wants to open a startup. And many of them do that. And they do that because Israel is in a constant state of war with enemies, the Arabs around Israel. How is it linked? Because military service nowadays, in Israel at least, only very few people fight. All the rest sit by computers and create programs. And they become experts in, oops, I pushed something, but that's okay. They create programs, and when they leave the service, they know how to create programs. One of my grandchildren, a young woman, and her boyfriend are experts in creating programs. He makes programs for games. He is a game maker. They live now in London. She studied in London in a university, in King's College, by the way. You must know about King's College, of course. And I said, will you go to study computer science? She said, no, I'm going to study music. She's a piano player. She wants music. Her boyfriend supports the two of them by creating games. Many, many young people in Israel do that, and they open many, many startups. But Israel doesn't have a market, very small. Hungary has Europe. Israel don't have anything like this. So we have to fight in the foreign markets. This is why young people make an exit. They sell the company because they cannot really market in the whole world. And many of them become billionaires. An extreme example happened 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, a company was sold, exit. The company was created 5 years ago by 5 people, young people, with the same history that I described. They created a program to protect information of large companies that are held in cyberspace. Protect that information. Google bought them. How much did they pay? $32 billion. $32 billion to 5 people who opened the company 5 years ago. Not a bad deal, eh? Okay, this is an extreme example, but many, many young people make exit for billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. The good part is that they reinvest it in the economy. They become angels. Angels are people who will become partners of a young company, usually in the same field of interest, and they are very good investors because they are interested in the company. And they don't really need the profits from the company. They just want to work again with young people and make the young company a success. So angels are best investors, and these very rich, very young people, very, very young, reinvest in the economy. So the result is that Israel GDP per capita is on a European scale. France, England, Germany, Israel, same GDP per capita. Hungary is half of that, one half of that. You can be there too. Invest in education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And if you can stay for a couple of questions, it would be fantastic.
Okay, I will answer a couple of questions. It will be fantastic, he said.
Okay, so students, ladies and gentlemen, now the stage is yours. Questions? Questions? Yes, in the first row, the gentleman. And I think the mic is going there. First row, please.
Repeat the question.
Yes.
Thank you for a great talk. So as a scientist, we always feel that we're sure about something. But your story was very tough. And for many years, people did not believe you. My question is, what held you together and made sure inside of you that you are right? Was it the result? Was it a gut feeling? Was it something else?
Thank you for the question. Let's start with this. The question was how I stood up for the highest authority in science. And a good example, by the way, I was supported by many, but some objected me. The problem was that those who objected me were the highest echelon of science. And the leader was Professor Linus Pauling, arguably the greatest chemist in the United States at the time. He was very, very famous, and he was a flamboyant speaker. He stood on stages like a politician, you know, and he says, "There are no quasi-crystals, just quasi-scientists." And 1,000 people cheered. I did not. But he was wrong. Linus Pauling was a very good X-ray crystallographer. He did not understand the power of electron microscopy as an analyzing tool for crystals. Electron microscopy can look at very small things. Nothing is too small for an electron microscope. But things are very small for X-ray diffraction, as I explained it before. He also refused to accept irrational numbers into crystallography. And quasi-periodic materials come with irrational numbers. So the only difference between God and Linus Pauling is that God doesn't think he's Linus Pauling. Linus Pauling, however, and this is not the first mistake he made. He made a few mistakes. I met him twice. No time to go into details, but everything was very polite. I can just tell you what were the last words that we said to each other. After my visit to his home in Palo Alto, I gave him a lecture for one person, 1 hour lecture with slides. I said, "Dr. Pauling, if you ever agree with me, please don't keep it a secret." Yeah. He died a non-believer. But in the beginning, most people did not work on quasi-periodic materials. Those people who followed my experiments and created great science, of course, supported me. But they were minority. Although there were thousands of them, still minority. So scientists, just listen, there is an argument. This is Linus Pauling, the sun in the sky, and this is what's his name, Danny Shechtman. Whom are you going to believe? of course. But he was wrong. He was wrong from the very beginning. And as I said, he did not understand the power of electron microscopy, and I was an expert in electron microscopy. So I could stand tall. I repeated my experiment. Did I doubt myself? I will not use the word doubt, but I checked myself. I repeated my experiment time and again to receive exactly the same results. I knew I was okay. So I could stand tall. I was very young at the time, 40 years old or something. Young, yes. But I was sure of myself, and I knew my science, and there was nothing to it. And yes, the head of my laboratory at NBS, National Bureau of Standards, came to my office one day, smiling sheepishly, putting a book on my desk, X-ray crystallography. He said, Dr. Shechtman, please read this book, and you'll understand that what you're talking about cannot be. And I said, you know, doctor, I will not mention his name. I know this book. I teach at the Technion. I don't need to read this book. X-ray crystallography, I know very well. I'm telling you, my material is not in the book. Took the book back, comes back a couple days later and say, Dr. Shechtman, I cannot have my name associated with your name. Please leave my group. So I left the group. But it meant nothing. Because what does it mean, belonging to his group? It means that if I need to buy something in the storeroom, I go to his secretary to give me some budget to buy something in the storeroom. This was the meaning of belonging to his group. So within half an hour, I found another group leader who adopted the scientific orphan, and that was the end of story. Nothing to it. Sounds, wow, people say he was thrown away from his group. It is true, but it's meaningless. I don't think I even told my wife about it. It was something administrative in the office. Nothing to it. But these were a few rejections. Most of the community, people that repeated my experiment and developed the field, and there were thousands of them, of course, supported me. To give you an example, you know, in France, the system is called CNRS. CNRS is the system in France by which they support research. And at the time, they supported 21 laboratories in France to study quasi-periodic materials. And in France, the system, I don't like the system in France, by the way, but this group does X-ray diffraction. This group is electron microscopy. This group does chemical analysis. This group, every group is does specific things. You do X-ray, you need electron microscopy, you go to that group. You cannot do it yourself. I don't think this is correct, but that's the way they do it in France, and France is successful in science. So that is the story. Any other question? He said 2 questions, so this was number 1.
Very good talk. Thank you very much. So my question is, did you know at the time that the magnitude of your discovery is going to be so big? Did you know that quasicrystals will change materials and its implication? Were you aware of that at that time?
Okay. So look to me. So the question is very good. When you discovered the quasicrystals, did you know the impact of your discovery at that time? Short answer, no. But how could I know? When I saw it, I didn't consider it a discovery. It was something interesting in the electron microscope that I need to understand what it is. I thought it was twinning. I spent the afternoon doing experiments to find the twins, and I couldn't find them. So I knew what it was not. But think of it as a discovery. It was just one interesting thing among very many that I've seen. Then it developed into a science that created a paradigm shift in crystallography, but that took time. You know, I'll tell you something, especially the young generation, which I'm so happy to see here. When Archimedes discovered the law of Archimedes, the story says that he jumped out of the bathtub shouting, "Eureka." Probably you know that. We don't do that anymore. First of all, who is taking a bath? We take a quick shower in the morning or in the evening or both, and we go to work or go to sleep, bath. But today, usually the first reaction of a discovery is, wow, that's interesting. What is going on here? Why is a straight line and one dot is here? Is it an experimental mistake, or it's really a discovery? So usually the answer is, that's interesting. One more lesson to the young people among you. I wrote every experiment I did in a logbook. Every picture I took in the microscope is in a logbook, with the date, with the materials, with the number of plate for the electron microscope, and what it is. Take notes in an official notebook of your experiments or your calculations if you are theoreticians. Make notes. You may remember your experiments or calculations for 2 weeks, but not 40 years later. Make sure you write everything you do in a notebook. And the best thing, use official notebook. My notebook is an official US government notebook for laboratories, official. And when the discovery of quasi-periodic crystals became famous, they called me in the laboratory and said, "We want to check your notebook." And I can tell you what does it mean. It means they wanted to make sure that I did not introduce any pages, that I didn't tear off any pages. And when you have an official notebook, you can do that because it's made of bundles of 16 pages, and each one, and then it binds together to a notebook, and you can, sometimes there are page numbers there, so it's an official one, and it's very important. Usually, it's not very important, but sometimes, just sometimes, it's very important. I'd like to finish, and that will be the end, by a little story. You see, there was one scientist who discovered the same diffraction pattern I showed you before me. How do I know? His professor, electron microscopy, professor from Europe, a friend of mine, calls me one day, years later after discovering. He said, "Danny, how are you doing?" I said, "Fine, how are you?" He said, "You know, my ex-students saw your diffraction pattern before you." How do I know? He said, "Those days we took pictures on glass plates, glass, not plastic, glass plates, which we developed and fixed and printed, long story." So he said, "I look at past plates that all my students took. I pull one of them, your diffraction pattern. I look at the date before you. So I call my ex-students. Hello, ex-students. Hello, professor, how are you doing? Thank you. Say, do you know that you saw Danny Shechtman's diffraction pattern of quasi-periodic crystals before Danny?" He said, "Of course, professor, of course I know." Said the professor, "Why didn't you tell me at the time?" Said the ex-students, "You know, professor, if I told you, you would want me to stay for 2 more years on my PhD." He filed it. Now, I have to explain. Finding it is not enough. Analyzing what it is the great achievement, because just seeing it, yeah, it's a very good beginning, but this is really a beginning. Thank you all so much. Good luck to you, young people.